Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another episode of Professional Roundtables, brought to you by Arrows Education. Arrows Education, we specialize in helping you realize your dream of studying abroad. And so, Arrows Education, it's an education consultancy and agency. We work with over 2,500 university and institutions across 30 over countries to from K-12 to all the way to PhD to postgraduate study, you name it. If you love to study abroad in any country, Europe, US, Southeast Asia, Asia, and Australia, just come and talk to us and reach out to us on our WhatsApp, on our social media, and we'll have our consultants reach out to you as soon as we can. And all consultations are given to you for free. And we would love to see where your results and all your dreams can take you. And let us help you realize this dream of studying abroad. And today we are very privileged to have Sam Cheung with us today. Sam Cheung is a teacher of mathematics and a broad experience in the field of teaching. Also ventured into some other fields along his career path as well. Without further ado, I'd love to welcome Sam to our midst. Hi, Sam. Good to
Hi there.
have you. Yes. Yeah. Could you briefly introduce yourself to our listeners and who would love to get to know you?
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm not sure about the title about Maths Powerhouse. I would say that, yeah, that's a little bit of a worrying statement. But as a teacher, I would say I don't just enjoy the maths itself. I love the pastoral side and also doing all the extracurriculars. So whatever passions I have, whether it's hiking or debating or starting a business, kind of we do extracurriculars in schools as well, and it gives me the freedom to run some of those as well with the students. I grew up in the UK, so I took the traditional route of kind of a Chinese nerd. So I did GCSE. I did very well in my GCSEs, and then at A level I did maths, further maths, physics, chemistry. So the traditional four, and I got entry into Imperial College. So I did a maths degree there, and I wasn't quite sure where to go after that. So I thought teaching might be a good one. So I went into doing a PGC, which is a teacher teach training course, 1 year once you've done your degree, and then I went into teaching. About 4 years after teaching, I actually left to do a master's in IT, but then I came straight back to teaching. So that's in summary where I've been.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you mentioned you went through the traditional path as a student in UK. I personally might not understand that context. I was wondering, like, so while you're pursuing your education in UK before you enter into Imperial College, what drew you to take up mathematics or further mathematics? Was it like because everybody's doing it, I'm doing it, or did you give it some thoughts as to what you wanted?
Initially, no. Initially, I was just I did it because I was good at it. I was better than everyone else. So kind of, and you enjoy it because you're better than everyone else. But then I was actually applying. As I was applying for university, there was a couple of different things happened when I was applying for university. So. Firstly, there was a boy in the year 2 years ahead of me who had an offer for Oxford to do maths, and I was talking to him one day, and I scoffed a little bit about him doing maths at university, and he turned around and said, "Sam, that's very unusual because you're one of the best, because I just won the maths prize as well." And he said, "You're one of the best mathematicians during your year. Don't you enjoy maths?" And I had to stop and think about it. And I thought, actually, maybe I do. And it's a very strange realization, because I didn't really think about enjoying the maths itself, but actually kind of I started to realize in that when I was doing my A levels, that doing the problem solving, having that satisfaction of getting to the solution, was actually a real joy. The other thing was, and please, no offense to any physicists or engineers, I was on track to do engineering, because I thought, that's what you do with double maths phys chem. How should I say this? Well, fortunately, I know my physics teachers aren't going to listen to this, but apologies. And I don't know whether it's the teachers or kind of the topic that we're studying. I literally woke up in a physics lesson and thought to myself, if I'm going to do engineering, it's going to be more of this. I almost did chemistry with maths, because I enjoyed, and again, that was down to the strength of the chemistry teacher, but also the kind of who brought it alive, but kind of mixing chemicals and doing all explosions and all sorts of stuff like that. I liked that, so I almost did chemistry with maths. But I knew I was good at maths, and it wasn't until after university, and while I was teaching and seeing other teachers, and also doing some kind of study for myself, that kind of the flavor of things like history of maths, I think is really interesting, and just brings some of the maths alive. Some of the problem solving, the more I learn about maths, the more interesting it is.
That sounds like in your progress of pursuing and figuring out what you're passionate at, sometimes you're just looking at what you're naturally good at while you were pursuing your study, and sometimes you don't even realize it. It seems like it's in your case until your that particular conversation with your friends, and it comes to a sudden realization. I think a lot of students at this stage, when they're transitioning and deciding where to go, they can feel a little confused about what they're really good at, and what their future may be. And that I feel it's actually completely normal. We hear stories so much from different people who made it quite far in their lives, and stages in their lives where they're completely confused, and so it's something that's normal. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I do feel the pressure for a lot of at least graduating secondary students are really stressed out, because we really have no clue what they want to do in the future. I
agree. And I think that we're less, certainly compared to 30, 40 years ago, it's less of a career now that you go into for life. A lot of people change different jobs now, and then start chasing other passions. And I've thought about doing that, kind of switching, but haven't done that yet. We'll see. Watch this space.
And so you're now in the teaching profession, and teaching a subject that you're passionate at, and you actually enjoy. Tell us a secret. What has kept you going in teaching for the past 26 years or so?
Well, the thing about as I said, I am just as much, I would say I'm just as much a pastoral, like schoolmaster, rather than your maths teacher. So half of my career I've worked in boarding schools, and I do love teaching maths. I do love seeing students have that realization. So I love all of the different areas, kind of like the different levels. So you've got the top sets, which are most maths teachers like, because they're very bright and they pick up things very quickly, and you can get out of the way the things that you need to teach them, and then you can go and extend them onto lots of different areas, especially the bits that you quite enjoy. But even some of the weakest who come into my class, so I've had quite a good success with the very weakest students, and they come into my class thinking they're terrible at maths. A lot of people think they're terrible at maths. Even people in the top set think they're terrible at maths, because they think I'm nowhere near as good as them, because there are people who just pick it up straight away. And I have to confess, I was one of those people. But
That's
you know,
thinking the
kind
same
of,
thing.
yeah, students look at them and think, oh, I can never be as good as them. But actually, they can, because if they work hard, you know, you can really get there by working hard. But I think the skill of teaching is, you know, feeding them maths at the right pace and the right level, so they feel they can accomplish something. And as I said, when I was a kind of a boy, I realized that accomplishment and being able to solve the problems, because I could easily go to kind of find a textbook where I would get lost in the maths, a university kind of or PhD level area of maths. It's very, very, and I could scare anyone with the level of maths and just make them feel stupid. And I, there are, sometimes I'm asked questions and I'm like, I have no clue. If it's a university engineer asking me about Fourier transforms, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But so if you can hit the right level, pace and pitch for even the weakest students, when they've got that sense of achievement, they can do it. They get more confidence, and they realize they can do maths, and that confidence takes them much further. So I've had students who have been in my bottom sets, maybe out of 5 sets or out of 7 sets, who have gone up to set 2 or 3 in the year, because they've gained that confidence, suddenly realize, actually, I can do maths. And so that kind of instant just makes me really enjoy maths. But as I said, half my career in boarding schools, I can chase and do extracurriculars, and I've run clubs for all sorts of things. I ran the school newspaper when I was in Malaysia. And I've run an anime club in the past, which I'm sure a lot of you think, oh yeah, that's an easy thing to do. I've shown film clubs. I've done kind of young enterprise, which is business company. I've done kind of charity stuff. So all of that is fun to chase. I think in a boarding school, the pastoral side can come very close to a lot of what kind of parenting is. So I've had to deal with heartbreaking situations. I've had to mentor students through difficult times. So I was deputy housemaster at a boarding school in Malaysia for 3 years, and that can be rewarding, heartbreaking, and rewarding.
Okay,
Yeah.
just sorry, Josh, before we leave the motivation part, I just have this question. Okay, you loved maths, you were good at maths, and then you also had schoolmates who knew that you were good at maths. So that did it for maths. But the teaching part, how did you know you were good at teaching or you were going to be good at teaching? Yeah.
I mean, as I said, I was one of these people who would pick up maths straight away. Now, that doesn't mean that you're good at teaching. In fact, often it means it's quite the opposite, because you take those leaps and people can't follow you. I realized when I was doing my A-levels that I could actually break down, because the way that I learn things is that I can break down the steps, and I could see where things are going. So having done that, and also having helped out some of my peers, my classmates, some of my friends with their maths, I realized that I could break down the steps and show people how it worked, rather than just intuitively being very good. Someone in my dormitory was didn't score as well as me, but he was actually better at maths in terms of intuitively taking those leaps than me. So that's me quite readily admitting he was a better mathematician, but I did better in my results because I actually worked a bit harder and was a bit more careful about my working. But he couldn't explain often he couldn't explain how he took those leaps. And I could just about follow, kind of some of them. Most of the time I could follow, but he was terrible explaining to other people. And as I said, I could break it down into those simple steps, and I enjoyed doing that. So that's why I was attracted to teaching.
Okay.
Yeah. Teaching itself, it does sounds really rewarding and very impactful as well because you come in touch with so many of lives of students and you can speak into that. In fact, we're serving our audience that you might have a hand in impacting them, and so to our audience, we do encourage you to really consider maybe teaching is something that you are good at, and teaching it's a profession that is worth considering for pursuing. For example, in Malaysia, we do have a few universities and institutions that are specialized in training up teachers. And they are such a valuable assets for the development of the country and the society. And so, yeah, put teaching on your list if it's something for you to consider. Maybe to help sell the idea of pursuing teaching as a profession or something that they can pursue in their higher education. What are some of the misconception about teaching profession that you might want to clear up for maybe for the parents and for the students themselves?
I would say that it doesn't necessarily have to be the very, as Bosetti talked about, it doesn't, you don't need to, in some ways, sometimes being the very best at a subject doesn't necessarily help you teaching. It's more about having the passion for the subject. And as I say to a lot of my students, kind of, if you have a slight interest, you can then develop that passion much more. And if you're going into teaching, I mean, it's true the saying that you have to be a lifelong learner, but you can make yourself interested, and actually because you go and explore, and there's so many good resources now. I mean, some of you spend a lot of time on the internet, but there are so many good. I mean, what is it? Even the reels having kind of information, signing up to some of these channels where kind of it's got information coming in. And I've signed up to a couple of channels because I'm very passionate about history and science. So it encourages me to have more passion, and I can flavor that into talking to some of my students about it, especially if they want to go on to kind of study history or kind of science or things like this. So I get information about all the latest developments in kind of renewable energy and lots of little interesting things that happen in history. So you can you get to then convey your passions to the students, and that's a lot of fun because that means that you can indulge your interests and then pass that on to students.
Yeah. So teaching doesn't it does take your interest, but it also encourages you while you're teaching, you're actually learning as well, and so it develops you as you go and pick up teaching. I think some of the misconception that I wouldn't either it's a misconception or it may be a reality. You can tell me from your experience, right? Like I feel like the world, or at least the industry or the way society works, doesn't really value uh, teaching as a profession well. As in like they don't pay a teacher probably as well as an engineer would do. And so, what do you have to say about that? And yeah.
There is some truth in that, I'm afraid. I think there is some truth. I think now, I mean, I spent 8 years in Malaysia. I almost fell into that. I just happened to apply to this school in Malaysia, and it just happened very quickly. And I've been much more conscious this time in coming to Hong Kong. International schools will pay you more, so actually you can get a very comfortable life. But it also depends on where you're coming from. But I think so certainly I would encourage people to explore international teaching. I think it does depend. So if you are finding it difficult where you are, if you go into teaching and you find it difficult, because the workload is heavy, or kind of the students are quite tricky, or you find the pay is not very good, then explore elsewhere. And and I would always say, kind of, if people are unhappy, you don't just quit teaching just because you think that your experience is dreadful. Do have a look at other options.
So before we leave that part, usually, just like what Josh said, I think the major issue people have with teaching will be the remuneration part. I was born into a family of teachers, and the last thing I wanted to be was a teacher. Funny enough, I ended up becoming one. So for people who want to explore international teaching, are there specific things they should focus on, and how early should they do that? How can they prepare themselves?
I would certainly say you need a qualification that is an international teaching qualification, because most schools won't take you unless you have that. That will enable you to kind of to be useful in that sense.
What are some examples of that? Sorry.
So for Britain, it's the PGCE, Postgraduate Certificate of Education. I'm afraid I don't know what the others are. I think that kind of the main teaching degrees in most countries, if you do a teaching degree, then that will be internationally recognized. But there are some qualifications where you don't necessarily, I mean, you might be linked to a university, but you don't actually have QTS, which is a qualified teacher status, internationally recognized. So you really need to check that the qualification you're going for has that. Otherwise, I would say that obviously speaking a second language can help for you going for another job. I think taking on responsibilities in a school. So I mean, as I said, my CV looks pretty good because I have run a lot of extracurriculars in a lot of different schools. So I'm a gold qualified Duke of Edinburgh expedition, which is international award, I think, in Malaysia. I can assess gold expeditions or do Duke of Edinburgh with the hiking and camping, and having run Young Enterprise and the school newspaper and various other things, I think that some of those are prized more than others. So if you like debating, that's always very good. Model United Nations, all of these kind of things schools love. So it's not just the basic. I can teach biology, I can teach history. You should really be showing something that is of use to the school as well.
Yeah. Well, I kind of feels like it leads us back to that same saying again every episode that we talk about. If you want to be successful in any field that you want to do, you can't be lazy, man. You can't be lazy. Yeah. So being active in your curriculum and co-curriculum activities are really key in helping you open up more doors to pursue what you really want to. Yeah. We want to dive a bit much deeper into the profession of teaching. We talk about some of the perks and some of the misconception. Maybe what are some of the biggest challenges that the teachers are facing in the nature of the work itself that students and teachers might not see?
Okay.
Students and parents might not see. Sorry.
The obvious first one that you immediately springs to mind. It's not really kind of like hidden. It's the behavior of the students. Learning to manage a classroom. Yeah. And I had a nightmare for the first 3 or 4 years because, I mean, being Chinese, I looked very young, and I was in Britain, and I would be mistaken for a student quite a lot of the time. And students, as soon as a young teacher comes into the classroom who looks like they're straight out of university or even straight out of school, students will immediately kind of like be ready to pounce. And my teacher training was in a very rough school. And I remember, I have to confess, I really struggled. I have a very loud voice, so I would use my to be very shouty, which didn't really help. You might think that having a loud voice and being able to shout down the students, it doesn't help if you don't target it right. So you have to work on that craft. And I see teachers who have been teaching for many, many years, and they still haven't mastered that craft. So I think that's something that you really need to master. And if you work hard at that, and each teacher has their own individual way of doing that, what works for them, and you've got to. But the stricter you are, actually, the more peace that you have. Now, I'm not talking about getting a class that's silent. I actually quite like a noisy, lively classroom, but I need them to do what I say when I say it. So they learn that they can't get away with not listening to when I want something done. And that will give you a certain amount, and just make you enjoy the class a lot more. Students actually respond well. Most students actually like a strict classroom because they don't like the chaos and being able to do, and that's the same with kind of any parent who knows kind of that discipline is good for their children. Because if you're not disciplining your children, you're just making more chaos and more trouble for yourself, and that's kind of obvious. As I said, the other thing is really you need to be a lifelong learner, because that's how you convey. That's how you relate to the students. I mean, I'm now of the age where I'm probably older than most of the parents. I'm going to be 50 this year, and the parents are 30s and 40s, kind of, and especially mostly in the 30s, and so to say kind of like, I mean, when you start, you're kind of you relate to the students quite well, because you're closer to their age than the parents. But now I'm of this age. The way that obviously you continue to kind of be friendly and talk to the students as much as possible, but being a lifelong learner means that you certainly understand that they are still struggling with things. You can talk about what you enjoyed when you learned it, and kind of learn things that you're learning, and also learning from them. I mean, one of the best teachers I used to observe, and I learned this from him when I was a very young teacher, is just kind of when he lost his temper sometimes to the class, but he would be very quick to apologize. If he made a mistake, he'd be very quick to apologize, and genuinely mean it. And these kind of things will relate you to the students, and kind of being able to relate to them, and have that humility of learning from them, and wanting them to do well. It's not like I'm lording this knowledge over you. I'm the master of all knowledge, and giving it to you. It's about kind of going on that journey with them.
So, knowing how wonderful teenagers can be, I personally I don't look forward to high school classes. I am more comfortable with the senior ones.
So we do the hard work for you.
What's the way out for maybe new teachers? Because for me, I would say if I end up finding myself in a senior high school class today, I'll probably feel really scared at the very beginning, because they can be really nasty. So what's the way out? How should a new teacher handle that part? What can they do because I've seen teachers bullied in class by students.
I get that. I mean, the thing is, you will. I mean, even now, 26 years of teaching, you will get the occasional student who will try to be difficult. but it's very, very rare that you will actually get those students, and generally there's there's issues going on behind that. So issues at home. So the majority of the students actually want order in the class. So if you create order in the class, and there's different ways of kind of getting a class to listen, and disciplinary policies, but also kind of making sure it's clear that you control the classroom. Most of them want to learn, and the thing is, if you understand that they want to learn, then they will actually turn on the person who's causing chaos in themselves, or rather they will ignore them and get on with the work, while then you deal with it. So having that understanding, and also understanding that kind of even the difficult behavior, the attention-seeking behavior, comes from a place of insecurity. So there are different techniques. You can take them outside, and you can talk to them. You can talk to other teachers and see what their strategies are with the students. Just having that understanding and getting over that initial fear of like there's 30 of them or 24 of them and one of me. And I mean, one of my primary behavioral management techniques is actually I make sure that I do talk to the students, before class and after the class, especially and outside of the class. And I find out what their interests are, and I talk to them, and they are always fascinated by kind of teachers. I mean, I don't know whether you remember when you're a teenager, like finding out a teacher might be interested in like same sport that you kind of, and then you can chat to them about them, or the same TV program that you watch, and you can get their ideas about what they think, or so I do try and keep up with a lot of what they listen, they watch, etc. Talking to them about Marvel is always a great one, and the latest superhero movie, or even kind of. But even if there's something I don't have no idea about, so like for example the latest K-drama, I do know enough to know that kind of like the men are always so boring with no character at all. And then there's some drama with so I laugh about this and talk to the students about this. And then if you've got that relationship with some of the students, if some of the students who misbehave try and talk to you about that, then I will kind of shut them down. And it seems like favoritism, but it's kind of, you haven't behaved, you haven't been doing your work, you don't get to enjoy that kind of relationship with me until you've shown me that you can work. Or it could be a student who's difficult, and then I've struck up that relationship with them, and I've said, no, this is classroom time. We don't talk about this in classroom. You can talk to me afterwards. You can talk to me outside class. But so they know that I can be not only be friendly, but actually I quite like them, and I get on with them, and I'm not just an authority figure who's just constantly bashing them. So that's the problem, isn't it? That some of them see teachers as and because they might have a frictious relationship with their parents, or because they're attention seeking because their parents don't give them attention. If I give them attention kind of at a different time, or I kind of can have a casual relationship with them and talk to them at other times, but then in class, no, this is time to do maths. So that for me kind of is something is about the relationship building.
Wow. Wow, teaching doesn't just involve imparting knowledge. It's spending time with them. It's a lot about shaping their character and their soul, and each case is so different. So
absolutely,
I guess this all comes by the years and the experience that you have with different students you deal with.
But again, that's what keeps it interesting. As you say, each student is different. And there used to be a wonderful advert, a very idealistic advert in the UK about teaching and trying to draw people into teaching. It's like the advert was kind of like teacher walking in and all his students putting up their hands, etc., which seems idealized, and actually it rarely happens. But one of the taglines was, when was the last time you went, you had a conversation with somebody who hasn't made up their mind yet? As adults, when I'm talking to adults, they've generally made up their minds. While with students, they're so kind of open at different stages, and you can change their mind, especially about whether they like maths or not, which is wonderful. They're at the stage where you can change and form their what they like and they don't like, and how they react to things, and that keeps things interesting. Every day is a different day in teaching.
Yeah. So now if you have a chance to make that advertisement again, right, how would you advertise teaching, right? What kind of perks or advantage that teaching has over other career or choices do you think that is very unique?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's one of the big things. I think kind of sharing your passions with the students, not just of the subject, the academic subject that you've got, but there is so much scope outside the classroom as well, to be engaging in those relationships with classrooms. Those are the kind of things that I would advertise the teaching profession to be about, being able to care for students, And
you have taught in multiple countries before, and particularly it seems like teaching is a very high mobility career.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what do you have to say about that?
No, absolutely. I've just started in Hong Kong, and I haven't met the students yet, but actually, when I was back in the UK for the last 3 years, a lot of my students were international students. So understanding how the value of being in Malaysia was the fact that I could understand a lot more about the way that Asian students work, and that helped a lot. But so my new colleagues have come from all over. So some of them have come from the Middle East. Some of them have come from there's one or two from America. There's quite a lot from around Southeast Asia, so Thailand and Vietnam. It's kind of very, very easy to find. Once you're on that circuit, it's very easy to find other jobs. And I was very tempted. I actually went back to the UK to help look after my parents. And because I've got godchildren over there, and a niece and 2 nephews. So I've got ties in the UK, and I'm kind of sad not to be over there right now, but help with family over here in Hong Kong. But I mean, it's the admin actually coming into Hong Kong has been a bit tricky, the bureaucracy. But actually finding the job was very easy. So again, if you are, I mean, it does depend on can depend on your subject. So in highest demand are probably physics teachers, but they usually cover it with other science teachers. And then computer science, if you're a good computer science teacher, you are like gold at the moment. And then maths is probably third out of that. But generally, if you're a good teacher and you can show that you've got skills that are valuable to other countries, then that is incredibly useful. So, for example, if you're coming from Malaysia, you already speak at least 2 languages, maybe 3. So if you go to a school and you're not even teaching Mandarin, but you have behind you kind of English, you're fluent English, and you have Mandarin, even if you're teaching something completely different, the fact that you've got that is incredibly valuable. The fact that you can sell yourself as, I know how Asian students kind of learn. Having some experience of teaching Western students as well would be helpful. And again, kind of spend a good few years in a school, do volunteer to do stuff, take on positions of responsibility, and then kind of that makes you very marketable.
That sounds a lot more mobile than being an engineer. Because engineer just kind of needs you to have a lot more certification if you're gonna ever need to work across different industry or even in other countries. But with teaching, it does seems like it just seems like a career that would not let you die of hunger as long as you're willing to work, I guess. Yeah. And so I heard physics teacher, it's in high demand. Computer science and mathematics as well. So these are, if you're considering teaching and you're somehow finding yourself good at these areas, really do consider teaching as a career. High mobility. High mobility means you get to travel and you get to places and have a lot of
Definitely,
options with
definitely.
career. Yeah. So it's interesting you mentioned computer science, right? And you mentioned you also kind of pivot and pursued 3 years of IT of masters in IT.
It wasn't
Um,
3 years. It was just 1 year, a 1 year
okay.
master's in IT.
Okay. So tell us a bit more about that. Like what drove you to make that change? And yeah.
Okay. So I'd been teaching for 4 years. And then I decided, actually, I was getting too comfortable. I was actually really enjoying it. So this is in a boarding school. And really, to be honest with you, my maths teaching suffered because I wasn't being held accountable. And it wasn't a very academic school. Since then, I've been to some very academic schools, which have really kind of tested me to make sure that I am kind of my teaching is good and my kind of like my subject is good, and that's developed that. But after those 4 years, I thought kind of I'm enjoying teaching, but I certainly remember that some of my best teachers had gone off and done something else. So, for example, my chemistry teacher, when I was young, she had actually gone and worked on nuclear power plants. And that just made her a little bit more interesting in terms of then she could bring in some of her knowledge for that. So a natural fit for a mathematician is generally is programming. So I went and did a master's in IT, and I enjoyed it, and it gave me a bit more insight into various bits of maths as well, which is I now bring into my maths teaching. So I do talk about the computer graphics course, and then multiple simultaneous equations using that, and I can talk about the context of that. I can talk about algorithms and how kind of it seems very dry, but as soon as you start to program in them, they come alive. These algorithms are beautiful once you start programming them. So that was helpful. But so then I was applying for IT jobs in these top London city firms, but to pay the bills, I was doing some supply teaching, and this was in some of the roughest schools in London, so really difficult schools. But thankfully, because I'd done 4 years of teaching, this was not like my PGC, and I'd now found my kind of my place as a teacher, security, and learned more kind of techniques to control a classroom. I found I was doing quite well, even in these rough schools, and I was doing and I suddenly thought, why am I giving up a career that I really enjoy? Why am I giving up teaching when I know I enjoy it? Now, I probably would have enjoyed whatever I went into. I think I would. But why? It's also fulfilling as well. As I've said, the teaching is very rewarding, very fulfilling. So why am I giving up? And then and it's for me it was never about money. I know I would have got more as a programmer, but it was more about how fulfilling the job was. So that's why then when I came back to teaching.
And it does seems like that 1 year of pursuing masters has helped you to incorporate some of those additional knowledge into your teaching. And you mentioned about programming. How are the students picking up on that interest? Are they really excited when you're talking about something that's related to that?
It does help me to relate to some of the some of the students who are going on to do computer science. So I have mentored a few who are who wanting to do computer science as a degree, and so I can point them to various directions about how to improve their programming, but also I mean, obviously it does parallel well with maths. And so I can relate to them a little bit about that, but also I can talk about various areas of maths that that I found interesting and useful for computer science. So there is that. Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Bosetti, you have any additional
Um,
question for
just,
Sam?
I think where I want to just go a bit to is, moving the mobility of the job, and then the level of attachment you feel to students. How does that work? Like moving from one place to another, leaving this group and moving to another group and another group. How are you able to manage the attachment part? So is it like you you stay away from getting attached to your students, or
Not at
just
all.
break
I mean,
their hearts and move on?
the thing is that regardless of where you go, the students leave anyway. So they break my heart more than I break their heart, to be honest. So I mean, so many students who I get on really well with, and then they leave to go off to university, and then some of them kept in touch. I've got a number of students who kept in touch with me, but obviously most of them will just go and live their own lives, which is wonderful, and what I want to see, to be honest with you, them kind of living their lives to the fullest. And so I don't worry about getting attached, and kind of like in terms of kind of I'm fully there as a kind of like as a teacher there. Obviously, like I'm not their parent, and I don't see them every single day. I've got some tutees who I'm very, very fond of, who I've left kind of, and I had them for 3 years as my tutor group. And I've told them that when they leave school, so they're going into the lower sixth now. So 2 years time, when they leave school, if they're ever over in Hong Kong, then they can look me up, and I'll take them out for a drink. I'll go for a meal with them. And I've done that in the past, actually, taking students out for a meal. One or two of them who have very wealthy parents have actually taken me out and said, kind of, no, my mum insists that we pay for this. So which is nice. I mean, but I think it's like anything, really. I mean, you've traveled, Dr. Mercedes, and the friends you make, the very best ones will keep in touch, or other maybe not what you think are the very best ones. The ones that it sometimes surprises you, doesn't it? Who keeps in touch?
Yeah, it happens all the time.
And those are the lasting friendships. Sometimes the ones who you thought, I'm not sure whether they're my friend or not, but they'll keep in touch, and then they become even stronger friends. And the ones who you think were closest, maybe not, because especially if they've got family or they've got kind of like really good friends elsewhere. But it's very much part of life. In any workplace, you will have people who will come and go in a way. Now, even the schools that I've thought are good and kind of like good structure, and I've built a lot in those schools, I know that as soon as I leave, somebody else will replace me. There will be kind of popular teachers. I would never say that I'm the most popular teacher. I wouldn't even say I'm a kind of like overwhelmingly popular teacher. I know that there are students who really kind of get on with me, so I've known that, and will miss me. But as I said, it's part of a life of any workplace, and it's part of a life of any work moving. And actually, every time you move is a really good thing. When I was in London, I did met a lot of young teachers who I would advise, and I would say that anyone who's a young teacher, you do 3 to 5 years in your first school, and then maybe even 3 to 5 years in the second school, because every time you learn, you've got to reinvent yourself, and you've got to work hard to make sure that your teaching is up to scratch, because then you've got to establish a reputation. Once you've established a reputation as a good teacher, it kind of makes it a little bit easier, because students come into your class expecting you to be a good teacher and expecting to learn. But working on that reputation, but also you've learned a whole load of skills from your previous school, some of which is relevant and some of which is not relevant. But then you can maybe take it on to the next school, but also what works and doesn't work. You then pick up more skills than So for the first 2 or 3 schools, spend a good amount of time, but then move on. I've then, as as I said, I worked, to be honest with you, I worked 10 years in, after my first couple of schools, I worked 10 years in London, and then I worked 8 years in Malaysia. But after the 10 years in London, I felt that I was too comfortable. Now that sounds a little bit strange, but I was thinking, 10 years, I mean, I could end up as a lifer here. It's too comfortable. And then I moved from Malaysia for a different reason. But then I learned a whole load of new skills coming to Malaysia. And again, you also learn to appreciate what's good in other schools as well. And knowing that every school is different, every school. So I'm always asked, when I move school, are you looking forward to your new school? Are you excited about your new school? It's like, not really, because there's going to be good and there's going to be bad. There's going to be some things that I'm going to hate, and there's going to be some things I'm going to love. One thing that's constant is that the students are going to be great. I mean, the students everywhere are great, and I love those relationships, getting to know the students and building those bonds with the students, and actually building them up as individuals. And I love doing that. And I think that's the same as at every school I've been at. So I know that students are going to be great in a new school. As scary as teenagers are, you might think that, but actually they're not.
Yeah. So one more thing that I would like you to address, we all, especially considering the fact that 26 years back, you were like half the age you are now when you started teaching. So you must have made some mistakes.
Oh, yes, plenty.
Looking back now, you know what you could have done better. So can we take some lessons from that? Maybe a few of the mistakes you made and you wished how you could just go back and correct them.
I don't really wish I could go back and correct them, just because, those mistakes make you who you are. But certainly I would do things differently with all the knowledge now. Is being able to control a class. You learn how to do that. Not using my voice as a hammer, but using it as a precision tool. Building those relationships with students and developing the classroom discipline through that, I think, is very important. There are other things. For example, killing yourself marking is really not helpful. Marking is important because it helps you know where the students are at, but it's actually more useful for you as a teacher than the students. And I always talk to the students about this, and actually that's why we employ computer programs for them to do work on the computer programs, because they get instant feedback. Because if you imagine it, this is what I always say to my students, if you imagine it, if you do a piece of maths homework and then you hand it in the next day, when is the teacher then going to mark it and hand it back to you? At the very earliest the next day, which means that you've got at least 48 hours. And sometimes it's a whole week before that you actually get the feedback about your piece of work, which is a terrible learning. It's a terrible way of learning. So it's terrible for learning. So they need to have instant feedback, which is why those computer programs which mark automatically are useful. But then as a teacher, I don't know what the common mistakes are, digitally I can see, but I can't see maybe in the working what the common mistakes are. So the marking is useful for me as feedback. So I have come to the opinion that certainly that the homeworks need to be shorter and more targeted to specific skills, so I can see where they're making the skills at that. Interleaved with the computer programs which give them instant feedback. So I alternate between the two at lower level. So I'd no longer kill myself trying to mark their homework, because, and even if I fail to mark a homework because I'm concentrating on or we've got the A-level exams coming up and I have to concentrate on that class, that's not going to affect my students that much. What I need to make sure is they are practicing and understanding the value of practicing those skills in classroom with the answers right there. Because again, if they spend the whole class, I mean, you occasionally get it's a very young student who will just try and copy out all the answers. And I talked to them. It's like, you're not learning anything. The whole point of you doing this is so that you learn it. I would much rather you take the time to do 3 or 4 of these and actually learn the skill rather than finish the whole lot and get 100%. And so I don't take in the marks for that. So they learn that it's about the learning. And so all of these things, I've developed my philosophy of how they learn, and I communicate with that with the students, so that they learn how to learn. And that's as important, in fact, more important than learning the maths, to be honest, learning how to learn. So that's definitely what I would do very differently to when I started. Lots of other things that I think you pick up on the way that, come up if we talk about them. But I think those are the main things.
Yeah. Maybe as we end coming to an end of this session here, maybe we want to address and help the parents a little bit who are listening on this session today. So they might be dealing with children who has voiced their interest in pursuing teaching, and dealing with this misconception that we mentioned earlier, or rather the reality that teaching profession sometimes doesn't pay as well as other career. So how do we help? What is a piece of advice that we can give to parents to best support their children on this journey?
Okay, I would definitely say that. So teaching is a noble profession. I know that sounds a little bit cheesy, but it is a noble profession. It is, but also I think anywhere the teaching is an above average salary. It's kind of what again, talking to parents and maybe wanting to scare them a little bit. What is the worst that your children could do? Do you? They're not going to end up in kind of the local supermarket, stacking shelves or on the till. They're not going to be doing that. If they're teaching, then they will always have a job. There is always a demand for teachers, and even if with the oncoming AI revolution, I think that not in the next lifetime will they get rid of teachers. Not in the next generation or two. But say you may disagree with me.
Because that's another topic for discussion next time.
That is a topic for discussion. But so you've got the secure job, which is above average, and as much as kind of we don't have the same. I think we don't have the same respect for teachers as we used to. Maybe kind of I think that it's still a respected profession. I think that you can, it's a job that certainly kind of, if you work at it and you overcome this initial kind of worry about controlling a classroom, then actually it's a job that's enjoyable. Yes, it is busy and you have to work hard at it, but it can be enjoyable. And actually you get decent holidays, which is useful, which is helpful for your kind of mental health and well-being as well. You've got to, most teachers, are doing it because they're passionate and also because, they like children. And so that is actually not only good for the society, it's good for, you help those and they help you in terms of, kind of, one of the things I find interesting is that actually it doesn't matter what background the students are. I've seen some of the students from the wealthiest background, 2 loving parents, wealthiest, incredibly wealthy, everything they ever need, and they feel incredibly sorry for themselves and they pity themselves and they're incredibly miserable, But the thing is, when I teach, I mean, it puts life in perspective. And it means that I learn to look after myself, because I see the way that sometimes students and also parents don't look after themselves. And so I learn to look after myself. So I'm teaching myself at the same time, not just maths, but life lessons. So as I'm conveying to the students, kind of, this is a good way to live your life, because that's the pastoral side. then I'm actually challenging myself as well, and trying to improve the way I live and demonstrate a model for them. So I think there's all sorts of benefits in that sense. And I think it's incredibly rewarding. And portable, and the pay isn't terrible.
Thank you, Sam, for pouring out and sharing with us your experience in teaching. It is indeed, like I feel so encouraged to see passionate teachers like you. I mean, we all benefit from amazing teachers along our lives, and we wouldn't be where we are if not for people who have given their lives and their time in investing in us when we were younger, and educating us and teaching us. And so do consider teaching as a profession, while you're now making decisions on what your life would be, pursuing a higher education. It is a noble profession. It is a very rewarding profession, and it actually pays above average as well. So don't be afraid to make that on the list of what you would consider a career for the future. And we're so grateful for Sam today again. Thank you for joining us. We made it to the end of this session without actually asking if AI would ever replace your job, but that's a topic for a different day. And we appreciate all of you who tuned in and watched this show today. And we hope to see you in the next Professional Roundtable.